My name is Eliana, and I'm 33 years old. For most of my life, I've been the family disappointment, the one they whisper about when they think I can't hear. While my siblings became doctors and lawyers, I chose a different path that my family never understood or respected. Growing up in the small town of Riverside Heights, I was always the odd one out in the Martinez family. My parents, Roberto and Maria, had big dreams for all their children. My older brother Diego became a successful heart surgeon. My younger sister Carmen was finishing her military training and about to graduate as an officer. Then there was me, Eliana, the family mystery. From the time I was young, I knew I was different. While other kids played with dolls or video games, I was fascinated by maps, strategies, and stories about brave people who protected others. My parents thought it was just a phase. They kept pushing me toward traditional careers like teaching or nursing, jobs they thought were suitable for a woman. When I turned 18, I made a decision that changed everything. I left home to pursue my calling, but I never told my family the whole truth about where I was going or what I was doing. I just said I was finding myself and that I'd be back someday. They rolled their eyes and called me irresponsible. Years passed, and the distance between my family and me grew wider. Every time I came home for holidays or family gatherings, I could feel their disappointment. They'd ask vague questions about my job, and I'd give vague answers. "I work for the government," I'd say, which wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. The worst part was listening to them compare me to my siblings. "Diego just bought a new house," my mother would say. "Carmen is doing so well in the military. She's going to be an officer soon." Then she'd look at me with those sad eyes and sigh. "And Eliana, well, she's still figuring things out." Family dinners became torture sessions. My cousins, aunts, and uncles would ask about my life, and my parents would quickly change the subject. I could see the embarrassment in their faces. They'd brag about Diego's latest surgery or Carmen's military achievements. But when it came to me, there was only uncomfortable silence. The breaking point came last Christmas. I overheard my parents talking to my aunt in the kitchen. "We don't know what went wrong with Eliana," my mother whispered. "She's 33 and still acts like she's lost. We barely hear from her anymore. She won't even tell us what she really does for work." My father shook his head. "She's probably ashamed of whatever job she has. Maybe she works at a fast food restaurant or something minimum wage. That's why she's so secretive." My aunt clucked her tongue. "It's such a shame. She had so much potential when she was young. Now look at her. No husband, no real career, no children. What a waste." Those words cut deep into my heart. I wanted to scream, to tell them the truth about my life, about the sacrifices I'd made, about the dangerous missions I'd completed, about the lives I'd saved. But I couldn't. My work required absolute secrecy, and I'd signed papers promising never to reveal certain details about my position. So I swallowed my pride and endured their judgment. I smiled through their pitying looks and their disappointed sighs. I sat quietly while they celebrated everyone else's achievements and ignored mine. I became invisible in my own family. But deep down, I knew that someday, somehow, the truth would come out. And when it did, everything would change forever. That day came sooner than I expected, and it happened in the most unexpected way possible. 3 months after that painful Christmas dinner, I received an invitation that would change everything. It was Carmen's military graduation ceremony. She was finally becoming an officer, and the whole family was invited to attend the ceremony at Fort Braxton Military Base. At first, I wasn't sure if I should go. The thought of sitting through another family event where I'd be treated like the failure was almost unbearable. But Carmen was my sister, and despite our complicated relationship, I loved her. She had worked hard to get where she was, and I wanted to support her on her big day. I decided to attend, but I had no idea that this decision would lead to the most shocking moment of my entire life. The morning of the graduation ceremony, I put on my best civilian clothes, a simple black dress and low heels. I looked in the mirror and saw what my family saw, a plain, unremarkable woman with no obvious achievements or success markers. Little did they know that underneath this ordinary appearance lay secrets that would blow their minds. I drove to Fort Braxton alone, as usual. My parents had offered to let me ride with them, but the car ride would have been filled with awkward silence or more comparisons between me and my successful siblings. I preferred to drive myself and maintain what little dignity I had left. When I arrived at the base, I had to go through security like all the other civilian guests. The guards checked my ID and waved me through without a second glance. I found my way to the ceremony area and looked for my family in the crowd of proud parents and relatives. The graduation ceremony was impressive. Hundreds of new officers stood in perfect formation, their uniforms crisp and their faces serious. I spotted Carmen in the third row, standing tall and proud. She looked amazing in her officer's uniform, and I felt genuinely happy for her success. My parents were beaming with pride. They whispered to other families around them, bragging about their daughter, the new military officer. I sat quietly beside them, trying to blend into the background as usual. The ceremony proceeded with speeches, awards, and the traditional passing of the officer's sword. Everything was going smoothly until something unexpected happened. The drill sergeant, who had been leading the ceremony, was scanning the crowd of family members when her eyes suddenly stopped on me. She froze completely, her mouth dropping open in shock. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything forever. The drill sergeant's eyes locked onto mine, and I could see the recognition dawning on her face. Her name was Sergeant Major Johnson, and she was known throughout the base as one of the toughest instructors in the military. But right now, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. I felt my heart start to race. This wasn't supposed to happen. I had specifically chosen to sit in the back, away from the main ceremony area, hoping to avoid any attention. But military training teaches you to notice everything, and Sergeant Major Johnson had noticed me. She blinked hard, as if trying to make sure she wasn't seeing things. Then she straightened up even more than before, her military bearing becoming even more rigid. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out what to do next. My family was completely oblivious to what was happening. My mother was busy taking pictures of Carmen with her phone, and my father was chatting with another parent about how proud he was. They had no idea that a few rows behind them, their disappointing daughter was having a silent stare down with one of the most respected military leaders on the base. I gave Sergeant Major Johnson a very small, almost invisible shake of my head. It was a signal that meant, not now, not here. She understood immediately. In our line of work, discretion was everything. She nodded slightly and continued with the ceremony, but I could see that she was struggling to concentrate. The rest of the graduation proceeded normally, but I could feel the tension building. Several other military personnel had noticed Sergeant Major Johnson's reaction, and they were starting to look in my direction. I kept my head down and tried to look as ordinary as possible. When the ceremony ended, families rushed forward to congratulate their new officers. I watched as my parents embraced Carmen, their faces glowing with pride. Other relatives gathered around, taking pictures and offering congratulations. Carmen looked radiant in her new uniform, and I felt genuinely happy for her. But as I stood up to join the family celebration, I noticed that Sergeant Major Johnson was making her way through the crowd toward us. My stomach dropped. This was not good. I had hoped to get through the entire event without any incidents, but it looked like that wasn't going to happen. I quickly moved toward the edge of the crowd, hoping to slip away before she reached us. But military people are trained to track movement, and she had definitely seen me trying to leave. "Excuse me," I heard her voice calling out. "Ma'am, in the black dress, could I speak with you for a moment?" My family turned around, confused. They looked at me, then at the imposing figure of Sergeant Major Johnson approaching us. My mother's face showed embarrassment. She was probably thinking that I had done something wrong or inappropriate at the ceremony. "I'm sorry, Sergeant," my father said, stepping forward. "Is there a problem with my daughter?" Sergeant Major Johnson looked at him, then at me, clearly unsure how to handle the situation. "No, sir, no problem at all. I just thought I recognized her from somewhere." My mother forced a smile. "Oh, I doubt that. Eliana doesn't really. She doesn't move in military circles. She works in, well, she has a government job, but nothing important." The way she said it made it clear that she was trying to apologize for me in advance, as if she was saying, "I'm sorry my daughter is so ordinary and unremarkable." Sergeant Major Johnson's eyebrows rose slightly. "A government job." "Nothing fancy," my father added quickly. "Probably just filing papers or something like that. She's always been very secretive about her work. We think she's embarrassed about it." I wanted to disappear into the ground. Here I was being described as a failure and embarrassment by my own parents, right in front of one of the people who knew the truth about what I really did. Carmen joined the conversation, still glowing from her graduation. "Sergeant Major Johnson, this is my sister, Eliana. She's the artistic one in the family." It was Carmen's kind way of saying I was the unsuccessful one. "Artistic," Sergeant Major Johnson repeated, looking at me with barely concealed amazement. "She's always been a dreamer," my mother explained. "Never really focused on practical things like her brother and sister. Diego is a heart surgeon, and now Carmen is an officer. But Eliana, she marches to her own drum." The irony of that statement wasn't lost on me. I had spent more time marching in formation than anyone in my family could imagine. Sergeant Major Johnson was struggling to keep her composure. "I see. Well, it was nice meeting you all. Congratulations on your daughter's graduation." She turned to walk away, but then stopped and looked back at me. "Ma'am, I hope you know that government service, no matter what kind, is honorable work. You should be proud of what you do." My parents looked surprised by her comment. "Well, thank you," my mother said uncertainly. "That's very kind of you to say." After Sergeant Major Johnson left, my family seemed confused by the interaction. "That was strange," Carmen said. "Why did she seem so interested in you, Eliana?" I shrugged, trying to look nonchalant. "I have no idea. Maybe I just have one of those faces." But I could see that Carmen wasn't buying it. As we walked toward the parking lot, she kept glancing at me with a puzzled expression. Carmen was smart and observant, qualities that had made her successful in the military. She sensed that something wasn't adding up. The family celebration continued at a nearby restaurant. My parents had reserved a private dining room to celebrate Carmen's achievement. Extended family members were there, aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends. As usual, I found myself sitting at the far end of the table, largely ignored by the main conversations. Everyone was talking about Carmen's bright future as an officer. They discussed her potential assignments, her career prospects, and how proud they were of her dedication. Then the conversation turned to Diego's latest medical achievements. He had recently performed a complicated surgery that had saved a child's life. "We're so blessed to have such accomplished children," my Aunt Rosa said, raising her glass. "A heart surgeon and a military officer. What more could parents ask for?" I noticed that she didn't mention me at all. It was as if I didn't exist. My Uncle Carlos nodded in agreement. "You raised them right, Roberto. They're both making a real difference in the world." "Well, 2 out of 3 isn't bad," my father said with a weak laugh, glancing at me. "We're still waiting to see what Eliana will make of herself." The comment hit me like a physical blow. After everything I had sacrificed, after all the dangerous missions I had completed, after all the lives I had saved, my own father was saying that I hadn't made anything of myself. I excused myself from the table and went to the bathroom. I needed a moment to collect myself before I said something I would regret. As I stood in front of the mirror, I looked at my reflection and made a decision. I was tired of being treated, like a failure. I was tired of the whispered conversations and the pitying looks. I was tired of my family being embarrassed by me when they had no idea who I really was or what I had accomplished. Something had to change, and I had a feeling that change was coming sooner than anyone expected. When I returned to the table, I noticed that Carmen was staring at me with an intense expression. She had been thinking about the encounter with Sergeant Major Johnson, and I could see that she was starting to put pieces together. "Eliana," she said quietly as I sat down, "can I ask you something?" "Sure," I replied, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the question. "That Sergeant Major Johnson. She looked at you like she knew you, really knew you, and the way she talked about government service, it was like she was trying to tell us something." I felt my pulse quicken. "I don't know what you mean." "And another thing," Carmen continued, her voice getting lower. "I've been thinking about all those times you've been away, all those mysterious trips, all those vague answers about your job. What if?" But before she could finish her thought, something happened that stopped everyone's conversation dead. The restaurant manager approached our table with a concerned expression. "Excuse me, but there are some people here asking for Eliana Martinez. They say it's urgent." I looked toward the entrance and felt my blood run cold. Standing in the doorway were two men in dark suits, the kind of men who only appeared when something had gone very, very wrong. The two men in dark suits stood at the entrance of the restaurant, their eyes scanning the room until they found me. I recognized them immediately. Agent Brooks and Agent Williams from my department. They never showed up in public unless there was a serious emergency. My family looked confused and slightly alarmed. "Eliana," my mother whispered, "who are those men? Are you in some kind of trouble?" I stood up slowly, my mind racing. This was exactly what I had been trying to avoid. My cover was about to be blown in the worst possible way, right in front of my entire family. "I'll be right back," I told them, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's probably just a mistake." But as I walked toward the agents, I could feel everyone's eyes on me. The celebration had come to a complete stop, and all conversations had died down. Even people at other tables were starting to stare. Agent Brooks stepped forward as I approached. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you immediately. There's been a situation." "Can't this wait?" I asked quietly. "I'm at a family event." Agent Williams shook his head. "I'm afraid not. We have a code red situation developing, and you're needed immediately." A code red meant lives were at stake. Despite my frustration with the timing, I knew I had to respond. "How long do I have?" "We need to leave now," Agent Brooks said. "Transportation is waiting outside." I looked back at my family, who were all staring at us with growing alarm. Carmen had stood up and was taking a step toward us, her military training kicking in. She could sense that something serious was happening. "Eliana," my father called out, "what's going on? Who are these people?" I took a deep breath. There was no way to handle this gracefully. "I have to go. There's an emergency at work." "What kind of emergency?" Carmen asked, her voice sharp with concern. "What exactly do you do for work?" Before I could answer, Agent Brooks stepped forward. "I'm sorry, but we really need to go. National security matters can't wait." The words national security hit the table like a bomb. Everyone's expressions changed instantly. My parents looked shocked, my relatives looked confused, and Carmen's eyes went wide with understanding. "National security," my mother repeated faintly. "What does that have to do with Eliana?" Agent Williams looked at me, waiting for guidance on how much to reveal. I nodded slightly, giving him permission to say what needed to be said. "Ma'am, your daughter is a valuable government asset. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't absolutely critical." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear my family's brains trying to process what they had just heard. Their disappointing daughter was apparently important enough to warrant emergency visits from federal agents. I have to go, I said again, grabbing my purse. I'm sorry, Carmen. I'm proud of you and your graduation. As I started to leave with the agents, Carmen caught my arm. Eliana, wait. What's really going on? What do you do? I looked into her eyes and saw the same determination that had made her successful in the military. She wasn't going to let this go. I can't explain right now, but I promise when I get back we'll talk. When will that be? My mother asked, her voice shaking. I don't know, I admitted. It depends on how serious this situation is. Agent Brooks was already moving toward the door. We really need to go, ma'am. As we left the restaurant, I could hear the explosion of conversation behind us. My family was probably bombarding Carmen with questions, trying to make sense of what had just happened. But I couldn't worry about that now. I had a job to do. The drive to the airfield took 20 minutes. Agent Brooks filled me in on the situation during the ride. A terrorist cell had been planning an attack on a major metropolitan area, and intelligence suggested they were moving forward with their plan ahead of schedule. My expertise in counterterrorism and my knowledge of their operational methods made me essential to stopping them. How much time do we have? I asked as we boarded the military aircraft. 12 hours, maybe less, Agent Williams replied. The target appears to be a large public event with thousands of attendees. I felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with high-stakes missions. This was what I had trained for, what I had sacrificed everything for. While my family saw me as a failure, I was actually one of the most skilled operatives in my field. The next 8 hours were a blur of briefings, surveillance, and coordinated operations. Working with a team of elite agents, we tracked down the terrorist cell and prevented what would have been a devastating attack. 3 lives were saved directly by my actions, and thousands more were protected by our successful intervention. When the mission was complete, I was exhausted but satisfied. Another crisis had been averted. Another group of innocent people had been kept safe. This was why I had chosen this life, even though it meant sacrificing my relationship with my family. But as I sat in the debriefing room, I couldn't stop thinking about the look on Carmen's face when the agents had appeared. She had started to figure things out, and I knew that when I returned home, everything would be different. The flight back took 3 hours. I spent the time thinking about how to handle the situation with my family. For years, I had maintained my cover by letting them think I was unsuccessful and unremarkable. But now that cover was blown, and I would have to find a new way to navigate our relationship. When I finally arrived back in Riverside Heights, it was late evening. I was tempted to go straight to my apartment and deal with my family the next day, but I knew that would only make things worse. They had been waiting for answers for almost 12 hours, and they deserved an explanation. I drove to my parents' house and found all the lights on. Through the window, I could see my entire family gathered in the living room, clearly waiting for me. This was going to be one of the most difficult conversations of my life. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. My mother opened it immediately, as if she had been watching for me. Eliana, she said, her eyes red from crying. Thank God you're safe. We've been so worried. Inside the house, everyone was there. My parents, Carmen, Diego, who had driven down from the city, and several other relatives. They all looked at me with a mixture of concern, confusion, and curiosity. I'm sorry I worried you, I said, sitting down in the chair they had clearly left empty for me. I couldn't call or text. The mission required complete communication blackout. Mission, Diego repeated. What kind of mission? I looked around the room at their expectant faces. These were the people who had dismissed me as a failure for years, who had whispered about my lack of success, who had been embarrassed by my mysterious lifestyle. Now they were hanging on my every word. I work for a specialized government agency. I began carefully. I can't give you all the details because much of what I do is classified, but I'm part of a counterterrorism unit. The room was completely silent. My father's mouth was hanging open, and my mother had tears in her eyes. Counterterrorism, Carmen whispered. You mean you're like a special agent? I nodded. Something like that. I've been doing this work for 15 years. All those mysterious trips, all those vague answers about my job. It was because I couldn't tell you the truth. But why? My mother asked. Why couldn't you trust us? It wasn't about trust, I explained. It was about safety. The less you knew, the safer you were. If certain people knew I had family, it could put you all in danger. My uncle Carlos, who had made the comment about 2 out of 3 children being successful, looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Eliana, we had no idea. We thought you were just a disappointment. I finished for him. A failure? Someone who couldn't get her life together. The shame on their faces was obvious. They were remembering all the times they had talked about me like I was the family embarrassment, all the times they had compared me unfavorably to my siblings, all the times they had made me feel invisible and worthless. We're so sorry, my mother said, tears streaming down her face. We said terrible things. We thought terrible things. All this time, you were out there risking your life to protect people, and we were treating you like you were nothing. Carmen stood up and walked over to me. Eliana, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. I looked up at her, seeing the military officer she had become. What is it? Today, at the graduation ceremony, when Sergeant Major Johnson saw you, she recognized you, didn't she? She knew exactly who you were. I hesitated, then nodded. Yes, she knew. And what she said about government service being honorable, she was trying to tell us something about you without breaking your cover. Yes, I admitted. Carmen's eyes were wide with realization. Oh my God, Eliana, what's your actual rank in this government agency? This was the question I had been dreading, because the truth was bigger than any of them could imagine. Just as I was about to answer, my secure phone rang. I looked at the caller ID and felt my stomach drop. It was my supervisor, and he only called when there was something extremely urgent. I have to take this, I said, answering the phone. Agent Martinez here. Martinez, we have a situation. How quickly can you get to Fort Braxton? Fort Braxton? Why there? There's been a security breach at the base. Someone has been accessing classified files, and we need our best investigator on site immediately. The base commander specifically requested you. I felt a chill run down my spine. The base commander requested me specifically? Yes. Apparently, he's heard about your work and wants you to handle this personally. Can you be there in an hour? I looked at my family, who were all staring at me with growing amazement. I'll be there. As I hung up the phone, Carmen grabbed my arm. Did he just say Fort Braxton? That's where I graduated today. That's where Sergeant Major Johnson works. I nodded, realizing that my 2 worlds were about to collide in a way I had never expected. I have to go back to the base, I said. There's been a security incident. Can we come with you? Carmen asked. I'm stationed there now. I have clearance. Before I could answer, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Agent Martinez, I answered. Ma'am, this is Sergeant Major Johnson. I understand you're being called in to investigate our security breach. Yes, I'll be there within the hour. Ma'am, I need to tell you something. The base commander who requested you, specifically, he's been asking a lot of questions about you since this afternoon. Questions about your background, your clearance level, your area of expertise. I felt my pulse quicken. What kind of questions? The kind that make me think he knows more about you than he should. Ma'am, I think you need to know that this security breach might not be a coincidence. Someone has been digging into your files. The room started spinning. Someone had been investigating me, looking into my classified records. This wasn't just a routine security breach. This was personal. And tomorrow I would have to return to Fort Braxton, where my secret identity had already been compromised, where my family's perception of me had been shattered, and where someone was apparently trying to expose everything I had worked so hard to keep hidden. But what my family still didn't know was that the biggest revelation was yet to come. The drive to Fort Braxton felt like the longest hour of my life. Carmen had insisted on coming with me, using her new officer status to gain access to the base. My parents wanted to come too, but I convinced them to stay home. What was about to happen would be dangerous enough without putting them at risk. As we approached the base gates, I could see increased security. Extra guards, additional checkpoints, and military police vehicles everywhere. Whatever had happened was serious enough to put the entire installation on high alert. "Eliana," Carmen said quietly as we waited in the security line, "I need you to tell me the truth. What's your real job title?" I kept my eyes forward, watching the guards process each vehicle. "I'm a senior special agent with the Counterterrorism Division of the Department of Defense." "Senior special agent," she repeated. "That sounds important." "It is." Carmen was quiet for a moment. "Is there anything else you haven't told us? Any other surprises?" I turned to look at her. "Carmen, there are things about my life that I can't tell you. Things that would put you and our family in danger if the wrong people found out." "But you're going to find out tonight, aren't you?" she asked. "Whatever's happening here, it's connected to you personally." She was right, and we both knew it. Someone had been digging into my files, and now there was a security breach at the very base where my cover had been nearly blown earlier that day. It couldn't be a coincidence. When we reached the guard station, I showed my federal credentials. The young soldier's eyes widened as he read my identification. "Ma'am, the base commander is waiting for you at headquarters. He said to escort you directly there." "What about my sister?" I asked. "She's an officer stationed here." "She can accompany you, ma'am. The commander said to bring any family members who came with you." Carmen and I exchanged glances. Why would the base commander want to meet my family members? This was getting stranger by the minute. As we drove through the base, I noticed that many of the buildings were dark except for security lights. It was late evening, but the level of activity suggested something major was happening. Military personnel were moving with purpose, and I could see teams of investigators working around several buildings. Headquarters was a massive brick building at the center of the base. As we parked, I saw Sergeant Major Johnson waiting for us at the entrance. Her face was grim, and she looked like she hadn't slept in hours. "Agent Martinez," she said, saluting me. "Thank you for coming so quickly." I returned the salute instinctively, a gesture that made Carmen's eyes widen. "What's the situation, Sergeant Major?" "Someone accessed our personnel databases and downloaded files on several high-ranking military officers and government agents. Your file was among those accessed." My blood ran cold. My file? How much information was compromised? "Everything, ma'am. Service record, commendations, mission reports, security clearance levels, everything." Carmen grabbed my arm. "Eliana, what does that mean? What kind of service record?" Before I could answer, Sergeant Major Johnson continued. "Ma'am, there's something else. The base commander has been asking to meet with you, personally. He says he has something important to discuss with you. Something that can't wait." "Who is the base commander?" I asked. "General Patricia Hayes, ma'am. She's been in charge here for 6 months." The name didn't ring a bell, but that didn't mean anything. In my line of work, you encountered hundreds of military personnel over the years. But something about this whole situation felt wrong. We entered the headquarters building and were immediately escorted to the top floor. The hallways were lined with portraits of distinguished military leaders and Medal of Honor recipients. Carmen was trying to take it all in, clearly impressed by the formal military atmosphere. "Eliana," she whispered as we walked, "why did Sergeant Major Johnson salute you? You're not military." "It's complicated," I replied. "I'll explain later." But I knew that later was coming much sooner than I wanted. Every step we took toward the commander's office was a step closer to revelations that would change everything. We reached a heavy wooden door marked Base Commander, General Patricia Hayes. Sergeant Major Johnson knocked and waited for permission to enter. "Come in," came a voice from inside. The office was impressive. High ceilings, military awards covering the walls, and a massive desk facing the door. But what caught my attention immediately was the woman sitting behind that desk. General Patricia Hayes was a tall, elegant woman in her mid-50s with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She was wearing a crisp army uniform with numerous ribbons and medals. But there was something familiar about her that I couldn't place. "Agent Martinez," she said, standing up. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "General Hayes," I replied formally. "I understand there's been a security breach." "Yes, there has. Please sit down. Both of you." Carmen, and I took seats across from her desk. I noticed that General Hayes was studying me intently, as if she was trying to memorize every detail of my appearance. "Agent Martinez, I requested you specifically because of your reputation in the intelligence community. Your work in counterterrorism has been extraordinary." "Thank you, General. But I have to ask, how do you know about my work? Most of my operations are classified at the highest levels." General Hayes smiled. "I know about your work because I've been following your career for a very long time. In fact, I've been trying to arrange a meeting with you for months." A chill ran down my spine. "Why?" "Because, Agent Martinez, I believe we have a mutual interest in your safety and the safety of your family." Carmen leaned forward. "General, excuse me, but what does this have to do with my sister's family?" General Hayes looked at Carmen with interest. "You must be the newly commissioned officer. Congratulations on your graduation today." "Thank you, ma'am." "Tell me, Officer Martinez, what do you know about your sister's military service?" Carmen looked confused. "Military service? Eliana never served in the military. She works for a government agency." General Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you think?" I felt panic rising in my chest. "General, I need to know why you requested me here. What does this security breach have to do with me personally?" "The person who accessed your files wasn't just interested in your current work, Agent Martinez. They were specifically looking for information about your military background." "What military background?" Carmen asked. "Eliana, you never told us you were in the military." I looked at General Hayes, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "General, I need to speak with you privately." "I'm afraid that's not possible. You see, the security breach involved files that directly concern Officer Martinez as well. She has a right to know what was accessed." "Files that concern me?" Carmen asked. "What kind of files?" General Hayes opened a folder on her desk. "Files that show the connection between you and your sister. Files that someone is very interested in obtaining." I stood up abruptly. "General, I need to know exactly what information was compromised." "Sit down, Agent Martinez. What I'm about to tell you will be shocking, but it's information that both of you need to know." I reluctantly sat back down, my heart pounding. Carmen was looking between me and the general with growing alarm. "The files that were accessed contain information about Operation Silent Shield, a classified mission that took place 12 years ago. Agent Martinez, you were the lead operative on that mission." "I remember," I said quietly. "What you may not remember is that the mission resulted in the rescue of several American civilians who had been kidnapped by a terrorist organization. Among those rescued was a young woman who was studying abroad." Carmen's face went pale. "Studying abroad? 12 years ago?" "Yes," General Hayes continued. "A young woman named Carmen Martinez who was a college student at the time." The room went completely silent. Carmen was staring at me with shock and disbelief, while I felt like the ground was disappearing beneath my feet. "That's impossible," Carmen whispered. "I was never kidnapped. I was never rescued by anyone." General Hayes opened another file. According to these records, you were held captive for 6 days in a terrorist compound in Eastern Europe. You were rescued by a team led by Agent Martinez. Afterward, you were treated for trauma and your memories of the incident were suppressed for your psychological well-being. Suppressed? Carmen's voice was barely audible. It's a standard procedure when civilians experience severe trauma during terrorist incidents. The memories are blocked to prevent long-term psychological damage. I felt like I was going to be sick. General, why are you telling us this now? Because someone is trying to use this information against you. The person who accessed these files is planning to expose your connection to your sister. They want to use her as leverage against you. Carmen stood up shakily. You're saying that Eliana, that she saved my life? And I don't remember any of it. I'm saying that your sister has been protecting you for 12 years, not just from physical danger, but from the knowledge of what happened to you. The weight of this revelation was crushing. For 12 years, I had carried the secret of what had happened to Carmen. I had watched her build her life, pursue her dreams, and join the military, all while knowing that I was the reason she was alive to do those things. There's more, General Hayes said. The terrorist organization that kidnapped you has been hunting for Agent Martinez ever since. They want revenge for the mission that destroyed their cell. Are you saying we're in danger? Carmen asked. I'm saying that someone is trying to expose information that puts both of you at risk. And I believe that person is here on this base right now. As if on cue, the lights in the office suddenly went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Security breach in progress, came a voice over the intercom. All personnel to secure positions immediately. General Hayes was already reaching for her weapon. Agent Martinez, I believe our conversation is about to be interrupted. Through the window, I could see figures moving across the base compound. They were dressed in black tactical gear and moving with military precision. This wasn't a random security breach. This was a coordinated assault. Carmen, get down. I ordered, my training taking over. General, how many exits does this building have? 3, but they're probably all compromised by now. The sound of gunfire erupted from somewhere in the building below us. Carmen was crouched behind a chair, her face pale with terror. Eliana, she whispered, what's happening? I looked at her, my sister, whose life I had saved 12 years ago, whose memories had been erased to protect her, whose very existence had been a secret I had carried all this time. Someone's here for me, I said, and they're willing to go through anyone to get to me. The sound of footsteps was getting closer. Heavy boots, multiple people, moving with purpose toward our location. General Hayes, I said, I need you to get Carmen out of here. Now. I'm not leaving without you, Carmen said firmly. Yes, you are. Because 12 years ago, I made a promise to keep you safe, and I'm not going to break that promise now. The footsteps had reached our floor. In seconds, they would be at our door. But as I prepared to face whatever was coming, I realized that the biggest shock of the night was still ahead of us. Because when that door opened, I would finally come face to face with the person who had been hunting me for 12 years. And Carmen would finally understand exactly who her sister really was. The footsteps stopped outside our door. In the tense silence, I could hear Carmen's rapid breathing and the sound of General Hayes checking her weapon. My own training kicked in as I positioned myself between the door and my sister. Agent Martinez, came a voice from the hallway. We know you're in there. We just want to talk. I recognized that voice immediately. It was Viktor Petrov, the leader of the terrorist cell I had destroyed 12 years ago. The man who had been hunting me ever since. How is that possible? I whispered to General Hayes. Petrov was supposed to be in prison. He escaped 6 months ago, she replied grimly. We've been tracking him ever since. Carmen looked at me with wide eyes. Who is Viktor Petrov? The man who kidnapped you 12 years ago, I said quietly. The man I should have killed when I had the chance. The door handle turned slowly. I raised my weapon, knowing that whatever happened next would determine whether my family lived or died. But when the door opened, it wasn't Victor Petrov who entered first. It was Sergeant Major Johnson, but she was walking with her hands raised and a gun pointed at her back. "I'm sorry, Agent Martinez," she said. "They took me by surprise." Behind her walked a man I hadn't seen in 12 years, but who had haunted my nightmares ever since. Victor Petrov was older now, his hair gray and his face scarred, but his cold blue eyes were exactly as I remembered them. "Agent Martinez," he said with a slight accent. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough," I replied, keeping my weapon trained on him. "Please, lower your weapon. As I said, I just want to talk." "Talk about what?" "How you've been hunting me for 12 years. How you accessed classified files to find my family." Petrov smiled coldly. "I want to talk about justice, about what you took from me. What I took from you. You were kidnapping innocent people. I was fighting for my cause. You destroyed everything I had built, killed my men, and left me with nothing." Carmen was listening to this exchange with growing horror. "Eliana, this is the man who kidnapped me." Petrov's attention shifted to Carmen for the first time. "Ah, the little sister. You've grown up beautifully, Carmen. You probably don't remember me, do you?" "No," Carmen said, her voice shaking. "They said my memories were suppressed." "They were. But I remember you very well. You were so brave, even as we held you captive. You kept talking about your family, about how your sister would come for you." I felt anger burning in my chest. "Leave her out of this, Petrov. Your fight is with me." "Oh, but she is part of this. Don't you see? For 12 years, I've planned my revenge. I could have killed you at any time, but that wouldn't have been enough. I wanted you to suffer the way I suffered." General Hayes stepped forward. "Petrov, you're surrounded. My security forces are already moving to secure this building." Petrov laughed. "Your security forces are dealing with my men throughout the base. But don't worry, General. I'm not here to hurt anyone unnecessarily. I'm here to give Agent Martinez a choice." "What kind of choice?" I asked. "The choice between her life and her sister's life." The room went dead silent. Carmen made a small sound of fear, and I felt my blood turn to ice. "Here's how this works," Petrov continued. "You come with me willingly, and I let your sister live. You resist, and she dies right here, right now." "I won't let you take her," Carmen said suddenly, her military training overriding her fear. "Eliana, don't listen to him." "Your sister is brave," Petrov said, "just like she was 12 years ago. But bravery won't stop bullets." I looked at Carmen, seeing the determination in her eyes. She was willing to die to protect me, just as I had always been willing to die to protect her. "There's a third option," I said quietly. "Oh, and what's that?" "You and I settle this once and for all. No weapons, no backup, just the two of us." Petrov considered this. "Hand-to-hand combat? Like the old days." "Like the old days." General Hayes stepped forward. "Agent Martinez, I can't allow you to." "It's not your choice to make, General," I interrupted. "This is between Petrov and me." Carmen grabbed my arm. "Eliana, no. There has to be another way." I looked into her eyes, my sister who had grown up to become a strong, brave military officer. "Carmen, 12 years ago, you told me that you believed I would come for you. You were right then, and you need to trust me now. But what if you lose?" "I won't lose. I have something to fight for." Petrov nodded slowly. "Very well, but we do this properly. No interference from anyone else." He gestured to his men, who moved to secure the room's exits. Sergeant Major Johnson was released, but kept under guard. General Hayes was disarmed, but left free to move. Before we begin, Petrov said, I want your sister to know exactly who you are. I want her to understand what kind of person she's been living with all these years. She knows who I am, I said. Does she? Does she know about the missions in Afghanistan, the operations in Syria, the terrorists you've killed with your bare hands? Carmen looked at me with uncertainty. Eliana. Tell her, Petrov continued, about Operation Silent Shield. Tell her exactly what happened when you rescued her. I looked at Carmen, knowing that the truth would change everything between us. Carmen, when we found you, you had been tortured. You were barely conscious. I had to do things that I'm not proud of to get you out of there. What kind of things? I killed 6 men that night. Not in combat, not in a firefight. I hunted them down one by one because they had hurt you. The silence in the room was deafening. Carmen was staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. And that, Petrov said with satisfaction, is the real Agent Martinez, a killer who will do anything to protect the people she loves. You're right, I said quietly. I am a killer, and if you try to hurt my family again, I'll kill you too. Petrov smiled. Now we get to the truth. Shall we begin? He removed his jacket and weapons, as did I. The others moved back to give us space. This was going to be a fight to the death, and we both knew it. But as we circled each other, preparing for combat, something unexpected happened. Carmen stepped forward. Wait. Both Petrov and I stopped moving. I want to say something before this starts, she said, her voice strong and clear. She looked directly at me. Eliana, I don't remember what happened 12 years ago. I don't remember being kidnapped or tortured or rescued. But I do remember something else. What? I asked. I remember growing up with a sister who was always mysterious, always distant, but who somehow always made me feel safe. I remember how you would disappear for weeks at a time, but you would always come back. I remember how our parents worried about you, but I never did. Tears were starting to form in her eyes. I never worried because somehow I always knew that wherever you were, whatever you were doing, you were fighting for people like me, people who couldn't fight for themselves. She turned to address the room. I don't care what my sister has done or who she's killed. I don't care how dangerous her job is or how many secrets she's kept. She's a hero, and I'm proud to be her sister. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the room. She stepped between Petrov and me. If you want to hurt my sister, she said, facing Petrov, you'll have to go through me first. Carmen, no, I said. Get back. I'm not moving, she replied firmly. For 12 years, you've been protecting me. Now it's my turn to protect you. Petrov looked annoyed. This is touching, but it changes nothing. Move aside, or I'll move you myself. I'm a United States military officer, Carmen said, her voice carrying the authority of her new rank. And I'm ordering you to surrender. Petrov laughed. You're ordering me? That's right, because while you've been focused on my sister and your little revenge fantasy, you've forgotten something important. What's that? Carmen smiled. This is a military base, and military bases have security protocols. As if on cue, the sound of helicopters could be heard approaching outside. Bright lights began flooding through the windows, and the unmistakable voice of a military commander came over a loudspeaker. This is Colonel Stevens of the 82nd Airborne. The building is surrounded. Release all hostages and surrender immediately. Petrov's confident expression began to falter. That's impossible. My men disabled your communications. General Hayes smiled for the first time all evening. Mr. Petrov, you may have disabled our standard communications, but you forgot about our emergency protocols. The moment intruders were detected on this base, a silent alarm was sent directly to Fort Liberty. The cavalry has been on their way for the past hour. The sound of boots could be heard thundering up the stairwells. Petrov's men were shouting to each other in panic. Their carefully planned operation was falling apart. "It's over, Petrov," I said. "Surrender now, and maybe you'll live to see another prison cell." But Petrov wasn't finished yet. In one desperate move, he lunged toward Carmen, pulling a hidden knife from his boot. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. I saw the blade glinting in the emergency lighting. I saw Carmen's eyes widen in shock. I saw my chance to finally end this 12-year nightmare. I moved faster than I ever had before, intercepting Petrov's attack and disarming him in one fluid motion. But instead of killing him, as every instinct told me to do, I held back. "It's over," I said, pinning him to the ground. "No more running. No more revenge. It's over." The doors burst open as military personnel flooded into the room. Petrov and his men were quickly secured, and medical personnel rushed in to check on everyone. As the chaos settled, Carmen and I found ourselves standing together near the window, looking out at the base that had become the site of our family's biggest revelation. "So," Carmen said quietly, "what happens now?" "Now you go back to being a military officer, and I go back to keeping secrets. Will things be different between us?" I looked at my sister, brave, loyal, and stronger than I had ever given her credit for. "Yes, they'll be different, but different in a good way." "And our family? What do we tell them?" I smiled. "We tell them the truth, that I'm not the family disappointment after all." Carmen laughed. "I think they've figured that out already." As we prepared to leave the base, Sergeant Major Johnson approached us. "Agent Martinez," she said, "I have something for you." She handed me an official-looking document. "What's this?" "Your promotion orders. Effective immediately. You're being promoted to Director of Counterterrorism Operations for the entire Eastern Seaboard." I stared at the document in shock. "Director? But I never applied for a promotion." "You didn't need to. Your actions tonight and your service record over the past 15 years speak for themselves." Carmen read over my shoulder. "Director? Eliana, do you know what this means?" "It means our little sister just became one of the most powerful people in national security," General Hayes said, joining our conversation. As we walked toward the exit, Carmen shook her head in amazement. "Wait until Mom and Dad hear about this. Wait until the whole family hears about this." I thought about my parents, who had spent years worrying about their unsuccessful daughter. I thought about my relatives who had whispered about my lack of achievements. I thought about all the family gatherings where I had felt invisible and worthless. "You know what the best part is?" I said to Carmen. "What?" "Tomorrow, when we go home and tell them everything, Uncle Carlos is going to remember what he said about 2 out of 3 children being successful." Carmen grinned. "And now he'll know that all 3 of us were successful all along." As we drove away from Fort Braxton, I realized that my years of living in the shadows were finally over. My family would never again have to wonder what I did for a living or whether I had made something of myself. The girl they had seen as a disappointment was actually the one who had been protecting them all along. And from now on, there would be no more secrets, no more shame, and no more hiding who I really was. I was Director Eliana Martinez, and I was finally ready to let my family see me for who I had always been, their protector, their hero, and their daughter who had never stopped fighting for the people she loved. The respect I had always craved from my family was no longer something I needed to earn. I had been earning it all along.